Hey everyone, professional wrestling personality Julie Cutler here, and you are watching the Fans View podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Fans View podcast. Today, we're talking what it really takes to get inside the business, why so many interviews seem surface level, and how to stay authentic in an industry that's built on perception. Today, I am joined by a ring announcer, a media voice on the independent circuit, beauty, brains, brawn, she's got it all, Miss Julie Cutler. Julie, how are you doing this evening?
Doing great. Well, especially following that introduction, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. I know we've been chatting about doing this interview for quite some time now, so I'm
For a minute.
for a minute, and we finally got the chance to meet at WrestleCade briefly back in November. So very excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for coming on. It felt like the universe at some points was just determined to keep us from getting together, but damn it, we're here. Let's do this.
We're here. We made it happen. You know
We
what?
did.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I was just reading this quote like within the past 24 hours, and it's called the burnt toast theory. It was about the burnt toast theory, which you might have heard of before, but it basically said, like, anytime that you burn your toast, or like you're late for something redirects you from being in one place at one time to a different place at a different time. It's like all part of God's plan, like leading you to the right place at the right time, which is where we are right now.
Love it. I love it. I'll take that. I want to hop into it because I'm so excited to hear your story, because I feel like it's very non-traditional. First and foremost, what pulled you into wrestling? Not just as a fan, but as something, you wanted to be a part of.
Yeah, so it's very interesting that you ask that, because there's kind of a couple of different layers to my answer. So, my fanhood started from a very young age. I grew up with two older brothers, one of whom was starting to get into wrestling probably about the time that I was maybe 6 years old, if I had to estimate. One of my older brothers was getting into wrestling, and then like one of our close family friends that I grew up with, who's kind of like another brother to me because he went to school with my brothers growing up. So the two of them were getting into wrestling, and me being like the pesky little sister, I always like kind of wanted to, be involved in what my brothers were doing. And, I wanted them to play with me. I wanted them to include me in things. And so I remember like when my older brother he was starting to get like the action figures and the video games and things like that. And he wanted someone to be able to play with too. And my oldest brother, he'll humor, kind of like going to wrestling shows here and there, but like it's not really as much of his thing. And so my middle brother, the one that was getting really into it, he kind of was able to pull me in to get me to like play the video games with him and things like that. And I remember like playing in my family room one day when I was little. I think I was about, like I said, 6 years old, and my brother was watching wrestling, and I think it was a Saturday afternoon, so I can't remember if it was like one of the auxiliary shows that WWE used to have. Like I remember they had Jacked and Metal and Velocity and like all of those kinds of shows. So I can't remember if it was that or if it was something that like we had taped on VHS that he was watching back. But I remember Devon Dudley was wrestling, and the Dudley boys were wrestling. I don't remember who they were wrestling, but that was kind of like my first memory of watching it. And I remember just getting into it very quickly from a young age. And it's funny because when I was little, like when I was elementary school aged, I kind of remember like fantasizing about what it would be like to be involved in wrestling someday. But I don't think I had a realistic picture of what it actually entailed to get there. And even as I got older too, I kind of fell out of it for a little while, and like
As we all do.
yeah, like the mid 2000s at some point, like When I was in like high school, college, I feel like I fell out of it a little bit. And then I think it was like as I was getting ready to graduate from school, my brother and our friend went to WrestleMania that year. And then I was kind of like, ooh, like, what are they doing? And I remember one day I had a dream. I had a dream that I was at WrestleMania and then I was like in one of the first few rows, which God only knows how expensive that would be, but that's not the point.
Wolf.
So I had this dream and then I woke up and I was just like, I've got to be there. And then like I feel like I started getting into wrestling again, oddly enough, after I had that dream. And then also because I'd graduated from college and at that point like I started my first full-time job. So I had more disposable income than I ever had in the past to actually be able to go to things on my own volition.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I got back into it. And I remember going to shows and like I always just wanted to feel like I was a part of things. Like I loved going to the meet and greets and not necessarily just to get an autograph. Like honestly, like I didn't really care about getting people's autographs. I more so cared about like I liked getting pictures with people because at least that's like a memory that like I could
Right.
share and be like I was with
Right.
this person, but also just like having a normal conversation with them too. Like I feel like it's, it's easy to go up to someone and say like, "Oh, I love your work," or "I love watching you on TV," but like I really liked to genuinely try and converse and form a connection with people. And when I was going to shows, I remember I went to a couple of house shows where like I got to sit pretty close to the ring. And I remember one of them specifically, this was like maybe 2019. And at that point, the tickets were pretty inexpensive. I was able to get front row tickets to a show, a house show. And I remember like just feeling like it was such a different experience being able to like talk to people, be able to
Right.
talk to the wrestlers, and like they could actually hear what you're saying and respond to you. And it just kind of made you feel like more a part of what was going
Right.
on. And it was one of those
Exactly.
things like the closer that I sat, I was like, this isn't good enough. I was like, I have to be on the other side. And so, funny enough, like me actually getting to the other side of the barricade somewhat happened on accident because
As one does.
yeah. Well, fast forward to 2021, there were a couple of guys that asked me to do a podcast with them that I had met at like some independent wrestling events in the Northeast and kind of on social media as well. They were starting a new podcast called Nerds of Wrestling that was more geared towards like people with like a significant fandom and, decent
Right.
wrestling knowledge kind of a thing. And so at that point, I was very in a mode of like trying new things in my life. COVID had happened. I had some
Right.
significant life events that had happened prior to that that kind of put me in this mindset of just like wanting to try new things and kind of put myself out there in a different way. And so when they asked me, I was kind of like, okay, sure, why not? It's not going to hurt. What's,
Absolutely.
what's the worst that could happen? Like it'll just be 50 minutes of us chit chatting about wrestling. So I did it and I actually really enjoyed it. And so I was fortunate enough. I had a couple connections that I had made through social media primarily. But at that point, people that were also involved in like the wrestling podcasting end of things. And so just kind of to humor myself, I sent them that podcast that I did and I was like, "Hey, just so you know, if you have time to watch this, I happen to do this wrestling podcast. Like, let me know if you're interested, what you think." And so then I had a couple people start to say like, "Oh, this is really good. Like, I should have you on my podcast." And so I started doing a few more like early 2022 and then turns out one of those people was my friend, my good old friend, Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful. And so we did, he had me on, I think, because as kind of like a test run for a backlash prediction show. And that went pretty well. And so after that, he was like, "Oh, like that went really well. I'd love to have you back on." And so then I started doing primarily AEW pay-per-view post shows with him. And then that actually got quite a bit of traction, especially at that time, because there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes in AEW that people were really interested in. And so I think,
Yeah.
well, like, for example, I'm sure you remember, it was Double or Nothing that year. It was the opening match of the show was MJF versus Wardlow, and there was like some chatter before the show as to whether or not MJF was going to be there because there were rumors that someone had gotten him a plane ticket home. And so I think people wanted to tune in not just to catch up on the show, but also to like see if we had anything else to say about
Right.
kind of behind the scenes news. And then that fall was the big fight that had happened backstage at AEW.
Brawl Out.
Brawl Out. And
Yep.
so again, a lot of people, probably more people than usual, were tuned in because they wanted to get the scoop on what was happening. And so I remember like that first show that I did with Sean, we streamed pretty late. We streamed for like a couple of hours, and it was probably like at least 2:30 in the morning by the time we were done. So then I woke up the next morning and I went on YouTube just like out of curiosity. And I looked at the video and it already had like 35,000 views. And so I was like, oh, I was like, if I knew people would listen to me talk about wrestling, I would have done this a long time ago. And so I got really lucky in that sense that I was kind of in the right place at the right time where, you know, a lot of people, Fightful's already a very popular wrestling news platform. A lot of people are already watching, but I think even more people were watching than usual, especially at that point in time. And so we did that together for quite some time. And in the meantime, again, I was very fortunate where I knew a couple of people in the independent wrestling scene. And I knew a wrestling promoter based down in Florida named Daniel Max Shaw, who runs a promotion called Pro Wrestling Action. And we had been in touch loosely for quite some time. And I have also have some family and friends that live down in Florida. So I like to go and visit every now and again. And he had sent me information for a show that they were doing. And so I said, like, oh, this looks great. If I happen to be down there around that time, I'd love to come see it. And then he says, we need an interviewer, ... Because at that point, he had some familiarity with my work for Fightful as well. And so I was like, okay, I'll book my flight. And then it was like once I got into that live interviewing atmosphere, and I was actually a part of the show, and I was backstage, and I was around everybody.
Yep.
Then it was kind of like, I was like, the podcasting, was fun, and I still enjoy it. And I still do podcasting periodically, interviews and things like that. But once I was actually like in the environment, I was like, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah, that's the pure stuff right there. That'll get you.
Yeah. And so this was like the tail end of 2022. This was December of 2022. And so then 2023, one of my friends actually that I had met at that show, who I was literally just talking to like before I came on here, he travels a lot, and he had tipped me off to some places because I'm actually based up in the Northeast. He had tipped me off to some places to reach out to in the Northeast. And I had a couple other connections that had tipped me off to some places in the Northeast as well. And so I started kind of, not like super aggressively, but like kind of started reaching out to some promotions up here. And I had one promotion that they invited me to a couple of their shows one weekend. And at that point, like, I don't think they knew specifically what they wanted to use me for. I think they had a couple of ideas, but like I went with the thought that like I was an interviewer. And so if anything, that was what they were going to have me do. But then it turned out, after kind of going to a few shows, them feeling me out and, seeing if like they even like me and want me there. It turns out that they actually needed a ring announcer. And so they asked me if that would be something that I wanted to do. And so I was like, sure, I'll try it. And that's literally how that came about, was me just being like, sure, I'll give it a try. Let's see how it goes. And so
that's the wrestling business in a nutshell. I do believe.
And so that first show that I ring announced at, this was like the summer of 2023. I had told myself, so I tried to get as much information on everybody in advance as possible because I told myself that I didn't want to use cue cards because you never see people on TV using cue cards. And so I was like, if I'm going to do this, then I'm going to commit 110%. So like I got a really cool outfit, like glittery. I had this like little
Yep,
glittery
I knew it
body.
was going to be glittery.
Yep. I was like, if I'm going to do this, like, I'm going to look the part. I'm not going to have cue cards. I'm going to memorize everybody's information. And luckily, actually, so I had my notes backstage and I got most people, I'll message them on Instagram and try to get their information in advance so I can have everyone's notes in advance. Sometimes things change last minute and I'll show up and there's like people that maybe weren't originally booked and things like that. So like I might get a couple people the day of, but I try to get as many of my notes together in advance as possible so I can memorize it. And then I was coming backstage. They had me coming backstage between the matches. So then that would also give me the chance to look over my notes in between each match. So I was like, as long as I have one match in my head before I go out, I can kind of go piecewise like that, where I'm not overwhelming myself with a ton of information.
Yeah, it's not information overload, right?
Yeah. And so I remember I was like getting ready to go through the curtain. And I told myself I'm not using cue cards, so I better memorize everything. I was getting ready to go out, and I just had this moment of like, oh my god, I gotta remember what I'm saying. And then the producer was like sitting in gorilla position, and he was like, Julie, he's like, just go, you'll be fine. So I did it, and I was fine, and I pretty much remembered. I really didn't have any slip-ups throughout that show. Like I pretty much remembered everything. And then I think once I got through that first show, I was like, okay,
off to the races then.
Yeah, I was like, I can do this. And then ever since then, it's really gotten, generally speaking, easier because, well, the good thing is like it's a little tricky like going to different promotions sometimes because then it's like to learn new people. But the good thing is that at least like working at one promotion, for example, you start to memorize, you announce a lot of the same people over time. So then like you really start to memorize their information, and then you might have a couple new people here and there that are introduced into the mix, but like you're not having to remember all new information for every single show.
Right. You don't have to memorize 8 matches worth of
Yeah. And then when I travel, sometimes now like I know enough people on the independent scene where like, for example, I go to Florida or like I'll go to Ohio or like one of those other promotions that I've worked at, and there's like still a handful of people there that I've announced before. So even so, I'm like, okay, like I know their stuff like the back of my hand. So like I just have to remember these other people, or even, and sometimes too, like every promotion's set up a little bit differently. So like there was one where I wasn't announcing in ring. They kind of had me stationed at like an announce table for most of it. So I was like, I don't even have to. I was like, this is like
you can cheat then.
Yeah. So that's kind of like how it all began. It was honestly a string of, in some ways, happy accidents and like different chains of events that kind of led me from one place to the next. And honestly, that's how a lot of it has been. It's just been like networking with the right person, meeting someone who knows someone, or going somewhere and meeting someone. It's all about just like connections. And
absolutely, yeah, networking is definitely the biggest thing in professional wrestling. I've learned that
it really is
early and often.
It goes a long way. It goes a long way. And sometimes just having the audacity to like reach out to someone or speak up for yourself can go a very long way. Because I mean,
for sure, people
will say in wrestling and independent wrestling especially, I mean, you can send out a million emails and messages to different promotions, and sometimes you're going to get a no from whoever's responding. Sometimes you won't get a response at all. You might get a lot of no's, and you might get a lot of people ghosting you. But then also, like, sometimes it's like maybe you know someone a little bit and you reach out and it's kind of like, hey, like, I'm really interested in XYZ. Do you happen to have any opportunity? And then you might know them well enough where they're just like, sure, you're in. And I'm like, There you go. Sometimes
Yeah, it's
that works out too.
yeah, that's funny because I had an interview earlier today where I was talking about just that same thing. It's kind of the same way with podcasting. It's like, I'm a small non-monetized podcast. So this is a numbers game at the end of the day. You're throwing out 20 emails or Instagram messages or whatever it may be. You throw out 20, I almost guarantee it 16 of them aren't coming back at all. 3 of them are going to be no's, and then you're going to get that one yes, and you just
Yeah,
got to work with what you're handled. So,
exactly.
I definitely understand that facet of it. Early on, did you feel like you said it was kind of like a happy accident that you almost fell into? Did you feel a pressure to like prove that you belonged?
Maybe in some regards. Honestly, I feel like it depends on where you are and who you surround yourself with.
Right.
I would say for the most part, maybe because I grew up as a wrestling fan, I had some sense of belonging fairly
Right.
quickly. And also because I came from, like, I had done some podcasting before, and because, again, I was really lucky that Sean trusted me enough to kind of like just let me come right on and give me some really good opportunities. Um, I think that might have made it a little bit easier for me because I at least had like something to say for myself. Like, oh, I was on like this uh news platform that's probably like the most reliable news platform in wrestling. So I feel like
For sure.
that gave me something to like feel like I had some legitimacy as a
Right. Yeah.
as a an
You had
individual
some street
in
cred.
wrestling. Yeah. So I will say sometimes, like, I felt, depending on who I was around, some people that are like really old school, I felt like sometimes as a female in the wrestling
Yeah.
business, I felt like I had to prove myself a little bit to be taken seriously because, like, there's some people that I don't know, they just have worked mostly like training guys, or I don't know, like women's wrestling, like it's obviously come a really long way from where it was many years ago. But some people that maybe kind of have that old school mentality a little
Right.
bit, I maybe felt a little bit of a sense of kind of proving myself as like a strong, independent woman who knows things about,
Right.
and
You're not
also
just a
because I'm
pretty
not,
face off the street.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and also because I'm not a wrestler by trade, because I'm doing like ring announcing and interviewing and other auxiliary things, being like, hey, like I actually have solid, I mean, I might not have the full training that, the wrestlers have, but like I have some solid background knowledge about like
Right.
the business and what's going on. And I mean, I still have a lot more that I would love to learn, but I have been lucky enough to be able to go to like some seminars and training camps and things like that where I could at least get a little bit of a taste of like the in-ring side of things, and
Right.
the in-ring terminology and things like that. And so I guess maybe trying to prove to people that like I'm not just a broadcaster, like you said, I'm not just a pretty face off the street, but like I really do take this seriously and I do really have a thirst to learn more.
Right. Right. For sure. And speaking specifically about your ring announcing, because you are the Jill of all trades, but to speak about the ring announcing, I feel like that's one of those things where it's not undervalued, but maybe overlooked because it's one of those things in professional wrestling where you don't notice it until it's not there or it's not good. You know
Yes.
what I mean? So what do you think is the hardest part about ring announcing that people might not even realize?
You really do have to understand the inner workings of the show to a pretty extensive amount of detail. Um, I think that's one thing that people don't understand. And it's like you don't have a lot of downtime. Like when I'm working a show and I'm ring announcing, like before the show, I have a lot of people asking me. I always take very detailed notes and everything too, and people know that.
Mhm.
And people are like, "Oh, Julie, like, can I see your notes? Can I see your sheet? Like, do you know what's happening at XYZ time? Do you know?" Like they'll ask. I get a lot of questions about like, what are the plans for X, Y, and Z, or I'm going to come out and I'm going to cut a promo. So like, am I going to need to take the mic from you, or am I going to need to go out with my own mic, and like trying to figure out the logistics of a lot of things, a lot of in between moments, and trying to figure out, um, just little things like that, like where's the microphone going to be, or Julie, do you know where, like, we did a rumble back in November for one of the promotions that I work for, and people are asking me like they need certain props at certain part of the rumble. They're like, "Oh, do you know if we have this? Do you know where this is going to be?" And I mean, maybe that's also like sometimes me wearing multiple different hats, but sometimes it's like I'm wearing an earpiece most of the time if I'm doing ring announcing. So it's like I have someone in my ear, and then like one of the venues that I work at, we have kind of like our own sort of Titantron behind me where like we'll have videos playing, and then we're also streaming live. So trying to understand the timing of, it's almost like you're working for TV, like the having the correct timing of like knowing how long the video goes for and how long I need to, if we have any downtime, how long I need to entertain the crowd during the downtime. And then when we go back to the stream, making sure everybody's ready to go back to the stream. And so there's a lot of
I'm getting anxiety just hearing
yeah,
about
there's
it.
a lot of moving parts that I need to be aware of that I don't think people always necessarily think about or realize, because as much as I respect the wrestlers for their jobs, because their job is difficult in different ways than mine. I mean, their job is extremely physically demanding, and there's a lot of things that they need to be nuanced at as well. But sometimes it's like, at least if you're wrestling maybe one match and doing one segment that night, it's like that's kind of your primary focus, is planning your match and your segment. But then, like, you don't necessarily have to be worried about all of the other matches and all of the other segments, and like, the timing of
Oh,
everything, and are certain things in the right
yeah.
place at the right time. Whereas, like, I have to know everything about everybody on the show. Especially if I'm doing interviews too, I have to know everything about everybody on the show, because not only do I have to have all their information, I need to know all of their backstories, and then I need to know how to appropriately phrase if I'm doing interviews with people.
Yep.
I'm
Where's the
given a
story
general
going? What are you
Yeah,
supposed to
I'm
do?
given a
Yeah.
general premise of like what I kind of need to ask them, but then it's also a matter of like phrasing it in such a way that sounds good and
Right.
will elicit the correct response out of them.
For
Hey,
sure.
you. Yeah, watching this right now. I see you. If you're enjoying what you're watching, I've got one quick favor to ask, and it only takes a second, costs you nothing, and makes a huge difference. If you could go ahead and hit that like button, maybe drop a comment. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed. Doesn't seem like much, but for small creators, it's everything. So let's help more people find this channel and keep the content coming. And honestly, I'm pretty sure the podcast will be really grateful. So if you're having fun, you like what you see, make it official, click those buttons, and the Fans View podcast, we'll see you next time.
For sure. For sure.
So it's a lot of
That
moving parts.
yeah, I mean that's so interesting. I run Gorilla for my local for a local promotion, so I on a smaller scale I feel the pain, and I'm getting anxiety now just thinking about it. So, one last thing I wanted to ask you about the ring announcing, facet of you is how do you introduce talent in a way that elevates them and makes them larger than life without overshadowing them?
That's a really good question. So I think there's a couple of different pieces. I mean, part of it is like, usually, again, it depends on the promotion, but usually most of the promotions that I've announced for, I'll be in ring and they'll have me center of the ring to do the announcement, and then I go to like the back. I guess if you're looking at it, you're looking at the camera back, or you're looking at like you're watching it on TV, the back left corner with the referee. And so sometimes like little things, like if the person gets in the ring and I kind of see the space that they're wanting to take up, if I feel like, they tell you like be center of ring, but if I see that I'm kind of like too much in their space, knowing when to like give them
Yeah,
the
just
space.
glide out.
Yeah, things like that. Like, some people who take directions very seriously, which is not a bad thing sometimes, might have it in their head like, oh, this is where I need to be. But kind of knowing like how to just kind of gently like you said, almost like glide back, like stay out of their space. And then also to add to that, when the talent gets in the ring, if they're a heel, let's say they're like a monster heel, if they give me like some sort of interaction, being sure that like I respond appropriately in such a way to put them over as a monster
Right.
heel, or even just like little things like say I announce someone and I'm in the ring, I'm in the back corner with the microphone, they grab the mic from me and they're about to cut a promo. Just like reacting appropriately, as to be like, who does this guy think he is? Like, what is he doing? Like looking at people in the crowd, what's he doing? Instead of just kind of like no selling it. So like the interaction, I would say, knowing when to kind of let them take over the space. And then also, I mean, certain people, especially like people that I have announced a lot, I usually sort of develop a what's the word? Like a cadence that I
Right.
like to use when I announce them. And so I really try, and I try to make it kind of gritty too. Like I feel like all the ring announcers that I've really enjoyed listening to are like a little bit gritty, but then at the same time they're not too gritty where it seems like they're trying too hard. That's kind of my
Right.
goal, is to find the middle ground in that, so that it feels authentic. It feels like it's my voice and it's powerful and it's got some oomph to it, but it's not like, oh my God, she's trying so hard that it's obnoxious. Trying to find that correct balance, I think, for me is important. And I think generally speaking, sometimes by the time like a show is getting close to being over and I've done a lot of announcing, sometimes my voice, like I really have to try to get it out, because it's like my voice is starting to go, like it's starting to sound
Yeah.
like I'm sick. But generally speaking, trying to find a balance in which it's impactful but it doesn't seem inauthentic.
Right. Right.
And because I think if it were maybe too inauthentic and too like, oh my God, she's trying to yell, she's trying to project her voice, she's trying to be gritty in a way that is just too much, I feel like maybe that could kind of take away from, the focus being
Yeah,
on the
for
talent as
sure.
well. Like, what is this ring announcer doing?
Absolutely. And that's a perfect segue into what I wanted to ask you next is, how do you navigate authenticity, in an industry that so often it's built on perception. That's a tight line to kind of walk.
Yeah, I mean, I guess part of me feels like, so the very first wrestling show that I ever did, I mean, I just started within the past couple of years. I was already 28 years old, which I feel like is, I mean, it's not old in the grand scheme of things, but like it feels old in wrestling. Sometimes when I see people that are like 16, 18 years old that are just starting out wrestling, and I think about like myself at that age, and I was like, I was just finishing high school. Like I don't know. I didn't know how to like run my own brand, run my own
Right.
business essentially. And so I do actually feel like maybe being a little bit older helped me in some way, because for one, I don't think I would have been quite ready when I was younger, just with like some of the things that were going on in my life and just like my maturity level at the time. I don't know that I would have been ready, but I also feel like maybe being a little bit older helps me in the realm of authenticity, because I feel like as you get older, it's easier to care less and less about what other people think, to be
Preach.
honest. And so
Preach.
I feel like I haven't been so much worried about trying to be like anybody else. I mean, if anything, I've always been very girly. I've always been very into like
No, not
I've always been very into like fashion and makeup. I did dance when I was younger, so I always did like pretty heavy makeup for dance performances, and I was always like into that kind of stuff. So I feel like in terms of my presentation, that's just like who I was already. And so I didn't really feel like, oh, I have to try and dress up, or I have to try and dress a certain way in order to look like a certain person or fit a certain mold. But I was just, for me, it was like, this is already like how I like to dress. So I'm just kind of like, this is just me. And in terms of like, for example, like my social media and being authentic, I feel like where I am right now, it's just kind of been a natural evolution over the past couple of years. Actually, when I was in, back in 2021, before I had done that first wrestling podcast that I had mentioned, I was in kind of like a transitional phase in my life where I feel like I was very into like putting myself out there and just trying new things that maybe I hadn't had the courage to try before. And so one of those things was actually I had signed up for the Miss Massachusetts USA beauty pageant, because it was something I had thought about doing for a long time, and I just kind of put it on the back burner. And so I finally said, you know what, I'm just going to sign up for it. And then once I pay that sign up fee, then I'm locked in and I have to commit myself 100%. And so I started doing more, I guess, like self-promotional kinds of things because of that, more like photo shoots and things of that nature.
right.
So I was already kind of like moving in that direction a little bit in terms of like self-branding and learning more about how to do that kind of stuff. And so I don't know, I don't feel like I felt an immense pressure to change myself, because I felt like I already had certain skills that I was bringing to the table. I mean, I think that like I've
Right.
gotten better at certain things, I guess, as time has gone along. And I'm still very much learning about just like sort of building, for example, like the social media piece of things. And
Oh,
it's hard. It's
oh
hard
God.
to get people to care about like what you're sharing sometimes, especially with different
Don't I know it?
social media platforms having like the algorithms and things like that. But I know we were chatting about this a little bit earlier. I think I've been less concerned about that and more concerned just about sharing things that I feel like are high quality and are representative of who I am as a person. And also, I like to poke fun at myself sometimes, and I like to share like funny memes. I like memes. I'm like
Don't we all?
so sue me. I love memes. Like you're gonna see a lot of memes on my page. You're gonna see cat memes, and you're gonna see, I don't know, like just stuff. Sometimes I just post something and it's like it's not related to wrestling at all, but I just see it and I'm like, this is really funny, and it really doesn't make a lot of sense, but like I just want everybody to know about it. And so that's kind of like the thought process is sometimes just like not overthinking it and just being like, I'm a weird person. And maybe the juxtaposition of me being sort of like a former pageant girly who likes fashion and beauty and makeup and all that stuff, and then being a wrestling girl, and then also just like kind of being weird on top of it might rub some people the right way, because then maybe they'll be like, oh, like I don't really know anyone else like this who like
Right.
looks like they'd be normal but is actually really weird. So
Love
that's
it.
kind of like my brand. Is just like
Love it. You were built for pro wrestling.
I feel like that's kind of my brand a little bit is like, I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, like we're all human beings, and at some point in time, like we're all gonna care about other people's thoughts, feelings, and opinions to some degree. Like we're all gonna have moments of self-consciousness or being like, oh my God, like was this like a weird thing to say, or was this like a weird picture? I don't know. We're all gonna have those moments. But sometimes I'm just like, you know what? Like, here's a meme about Diet Coke. I just posted a photo shoot on my page recently where I was just drinking Diet Coke, and I was like, this doesn't really have to do with anything, but I just like it. So sometimes it's just, I feel like it's just saying like, this is just me, take it or leave it.
I love it. Hey, I love it. Again, that's that authenticity that shines through, and that's why you have the following that you have. I mean, that's it.
I appreciate that. And again, like we're always, working on continued growth. But to your point, I appreciate you using the word authenticity because any growth that I do have, I don't want it to be inauthentic. I don't want it to be like, oh, I'm trying to do this to try and get followers. Like you look up on, Chat GPT,
Hmm.
methods to get Instagram engagement up. Like what is the algorithm doing? And it's one thing to like sort of look at those and be like, okay, this is like a guideline for generally what I should be doing, but like I
Right.
never want to follow that in such a way that feels like I'm trying too hard, that feels inauthentic, that's just like comment an emoji on this picture for no reason. You know what I mean? That's just like
Yeah.
trying to drive engagement. Like if
Right.
people want to communicate with me, I want it to be for meaningful reason. Like I want to connect
Right.
with people based on who I actually am and the work that I'm doing. I don't want it to be, some people buying followers, and I don't want it to be inauthentic. I just want it to be because like I'm being me and I'm doing what I love and hopefully doing it well.
For sure. I think we can all agree you're doing it well, and I love that. I
Well,
think
thank
I think
you.
that our word of the day today is going to be authenticity. Authentic.
Yeah, I you have to
Um,
do like a
you have
count.
been so gracious with
How
your
many
time.
times we
This is going
use
to have to be
that
like a
word
2 or 3
today?
or 4 part episode because I don't want to I don't want to let you go. But I do have 2 questions that I have to ask you before I let you get out of here.
Sure.
Number one being outside of professional wrestling, away from the ring, and outside of Diet Coke, because we know you're an aficionado. What are you a fan of?
Yeah. I'm trying to think like what do I do in my spare time? I do like to go to the gym. I like to go to the gym. A couple years ago when I signed up for my beauty pageant, I had also signed up for personal training at the same time because the pageant that I was in, there were 3 portions that you were judged on. There was an interview, an evening gown portion and a swimsuit portion. And I told myself, I was like, if I'm going to be seen on stage in a swimsuit, if I just paid like however much money I paid to sign up for this thing, then like I really want to make sure that I'm giving it my 100% best effort. And so, as I was signing up for my pageant, that was kind of when I started lifting more regularly. And actually, my trainer that I signed up with, that was in the fall of 2021. I still work with her to this day, and she's actually become one of my really close friends. And so all of our gym sessions are just so much fun because it's like, I don't know, we've gotten to know each other so well at this point. It's like we have a lot of funny like inside jokes and things we'll talk about that just like make the sessions really entertaining. And so I like to lift. That's like such a meathead answer. I'm sorry. I do like to I like to go to the gym. Um, I am an aunt. I'm a very dedicated aunt. I like to be Auntie Julie in my spare time. My nephew, when he was little, he couldn't pronounce the L in my name. So instead of Julie, he called me Auntie Julie. So I still call myself that to this day.
Love it. Love it.
um, I used to be a dancer. I know I mentioned that briefly when I was growing up. I was really heavy into ballet, like when I was a teenager. And then, fun fact, when I was in college, I was on the ballroom dance team. And so I also did that for like a little bit after I graduated from college as well. I was taking ballroom dance lessons and did like a couple competitions.
That's very
But then,
cool.
yeah, it was hard because COVID happened and a lot of competitions were like they were making virtual competitions and things like that, which was just like much harder to judge and it just like wasn't really the same experience.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
it was something creative that people were able to do. So dancing, I played the violin growing up. I haven't picked up the violin in quite some time, but if I ever get my violin repaired, which has been on my list for quite some time, maybe I will pick it back up again.
You really
Um,
are the Jill of all trades, aren't you?
I try. I well, I that's actually something that it's very meaningful to me. Well-roundedness is very meaningful
Hmm.
to me because I feel like you could be really phenomenal, and I've seen this growing up in some of these hobbies that I've done, like people that are really, really exceptional at one thing, but then like really lacking skills in other areas. To me, I really value well-roundedness, and it's like even a lot of the hobbies that I did, I don't know if I ever felt like I was the best at, like I was good at a lot of them, I think. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but like I feel like I was like a decent violinist for, the
Right.
training that I had, and I was a good dancer. Um but I never really felt like I was the best at anything. And I think also, just to tie this back into wrestling, I think maybe that's partially why I do love wrestling so much and why I love the role that I'm in, because I think this is the thing that makes me feel the most like that girl that
Right.
than anything else that I've ever done. Especially like if you're ring announcing on the show and like you're the host of the show, and that's you, that's your role on the show. And especially places where like I have more of a connection with the fans there and the fans know me a little bit better.
Hmm.
I feel like that's my place and those are my people and this is where I belong. And I
I
think
love that.
that's the thing that gets me about wrestling is like people have asked me like why do you love it so much, or like what brings you here. And I think it's that feeling of, all these other things that I've done where I'm like, yeah, I'm good at it and I enjoy it, but like I've just never felt like I hit maybe my fullest potential in some of
Hmm.
my previous hobbies. Whereas when I am doing my thing in wrestling, I feel like the it girl.
Love that. That's a fantastic answer, and it kind of lends itself to my last question, which is my favorite question to ask anyone, and that is, at this stage of not only your career and your time in wrestling, but of life, how do you define success?
That is an excellent question. And to me, success is happiness. Success is well, to my previous point, well roundedness to some degree, having a life that is not overly deficient in any specific area that is important to you, and happiness. Like, a lot of people equate success with money, a lot of people equate success with like status. And I feel like a lot of people will ask me, like, what are your goals in wrestling? Or like, is there a major company that you want to work for? Which I mean, I think like for everybody in wrestling, not everybody, but like most people that are really in it, that take it seriously, like the goal, you're training, you're working your way up the independent scenes. I think most people generally want to get signed by a major company. But to me,
Right.
the landscape of wrestling has changed so much over the past several years. And it continues to change all the time. Like, I might look at one company and be like, wow, like I really love what they're doing right now. And then a year or two later, it's a different company that's doing the stuff that I like. And maybe one's kind of
Right.
like moved in a different direction creatively. So it's like people will ask, like, oh, like, what is the goal? Or like, where do you want to work? And honestly, I don't even know sometimes that I want to give a solid answer to that, because part of me just feels like I've been following this path And I'm sort of, it like we've said before, it's been one happy accident or one chain of events that leads me from one place to the next, to the next, to the next.
Right.
So I kind of feel like wherever I wind up is kind of like wherever I'm destined to be. And if I keep doing what I'm doing and continuing to search for opportunity, to put myself out there, to not be afraid to ask, because sometimes people want to do things and they're like, like, oh, I don't know, like, they're thinking about
Right.
messaging someone, or they're thinking about showing up to some place where like maybe there could be opportunity. And so just like continuing to sometimes just do the thing and see what happens and see where it gets you, or send the
Absolutely.
message and see where it gets you. So just kind of
Just
following
do it.
that path and like just do it, seeing where it takes me. So being ultimately in a place where I'm happy. And obviously I said money isn't the most important thing, but like financial stability is great.
For sure.
And being able to also take the time that I need to practice self-care and be able to dedicate the time, love, and attention to my family and friends and loved ones that they deserve as well. So it's all about balance. It's all about balance, and it's all about sometimes it's like work smarter, not harder.
I live by that, so I'm with you.
Because you can work, and I was getting really in my head about this a little bit actually at the end of the year, because you see people that post a million things about, I've called this many matches, or I've been at this many promotions in this many states, and it's cool for those people. Like I'm happy for those people for their accomplishments, and I think it's a good thing to be proud of your accomplishments. And kudos to everybody who is working extremely hard. But like sometimes I would get in my head and be like, oh my God, like, because I don't really keep track of numbers like that. So then I was thinking,
Right.
oh my God, like, am I doing it? I was like, I don't even know. I don't even know. I was like, I guess I could go back and count, but like, that's not really like the way that I want to do things. As long as I feel like I'm working places where, I'm working with great people and I'm getting quality video and quality photos and quality experience, most importantly, and good feedback from people that I trust. It's like I said, work smarter, not hard. Because I could do like 1,000,001 shows and just be scrambling for like literally any show that I could possibly be on. But then I might be really burnt out, or I might not be able to give my best presentation at every single one of those shows, or I might not have any content to show for some of those shows. So
yeah. Well, and sometimes it's about the quality of the connections, not so much the quantity.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
for sure.
Exactly. And so I think that's another thing too. When I say it's all about balance, it's like the, quality over quantity. Keeping that balance with like really quality people, things, and experiences in your life.
For sure. I love that answer, and I love the authenticity that just oozes from you when you speak.
Thank you.
Julie, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm so glad we can make this work.
Thank you.
Let people know, let promoters know where they can book you, fans know where they can get a hold of you.
Okay, so the best place to connect with me is on my Instagram. It is at @thefansviewpodcast. I always say crown is spelled with an E at the end because it's the old English spelling. That's just how we roll here, aka the other handle without the E wasn't available, so I had to kind of get creative. But it's nice.
We're gonna kayfabe that. It's fine.
It's a classy spelling for a classy lady. So that's probably the best place to reach out to me, and also just follow along with my wrestling journey and other things that I'm doing as well.
I love it, and I believe you got a t-shirt floating out there, don't you?
Yes. So I have a couple. I just released 2 new designs back in November. I debuted them at WrestleCade, where I was being hosted by a Global Wrestling Family, who were so phenomenal to me. And it was such a great weekend, thanks to them. So we debuted, it's the same design, but it's 2 different colors. So you can find it on Pro Wrestling Tees as well. I have an older design on there, and then I have like the 2 new ones that I just debuted not too long ago. And so they're really, I've seen them in person. Not to put them over or anything too much, but I thought they were pretty nice in person. And the fabric was pretty soft too. I
Yeah,
guess
for
if you
sure.
get like the ultra soft fabric.
Yeah, Pro Wrestling Tees always puts out a quality product, so I'll put it over if you won't. They are
Thank
fantastic,
you.
guys. If you have the means, if you have some expendable income, make sure to go support Julie in that way. Get yourself a t-shirt, and if not, you know what? A follow on Instagram is absolutely free. And while you're at it, go ahead and like and follow the Fans View podcast. Why not? You know, that's a twofer, guys. That's value, is what that is. So, like I said, Julie, hopefully this is the first of many appearances, because I didn't even crack the list of questions I had for you, because we just started going and vibing, and I was not going to interrupt it. So hopefully part 2 is incoming, and it won't be as difficult for us to connect next time.
Yes, before we came on here, we were talking offline a little bit, but my computer, it's like, it generally works okay for the most part, but then it's like, as soon as I actually have to do something important, and this has happened to me in the past as well, a couple other podcasts that I've done where, you know, I'm trying to kind of get on there at the last minute, all of a sudden it's like, you have updates to do, and here's some security information for you, and everything's loading really slowly, like it's 2002, and
It's always something.
So it's always something.
God bless technology. Well, hey, we made it happen. We got
We
part
did.
1 knocked out. Part 2, TBD, ... Maybe after we have this Kayla Lopez wrestler that you might be kind of familiar with on in a couple weeks,
that's
we'll
my
bring you back.
Yes, that is my wrestling best friend.
So once we have Kayla on, we'll bring you back and we'll debrief that whole episode too, on top of all the other questions that I have for you, because Lord knows I have a bunch of them.
I'm going to be seeing her this weekend, because we're on a show together this Saturday for Rebel Spirit Pro Wrestling, Saturday, January 17th in Marlborough, Massachusetts. And it's going to be a really big show, because our current heavyweight champion is Donovan Dijak, and he is going head to head with the winner of our Rumble at the end of last year, NWA superstar Spencer Slade. So that's going to be our main event. And then the whole rest of the card is stacked as well. Kayla's
Just
going to be
banger after banger.
Yeah, Kayla is in a women's tag match that we have. And we have a lot of really strong stuff to start off the 2026 season. So if you guys are in Massachusetts or the New England area, definitely check us out.
Heck yeah, go check that out. And hey, you can see Julie in person and support her that way. There's a myriad of ways to support our girl here. Like I said, guys, if you have the expendable income, go buy a t-shirt. If not, drop a follow, show her some love on Instagram, show the Fans View some love, the like, subscribe. You guys know the deal. It's 2026. I don't have to go through the spiel. Julie, thank you for joining us. We're going to see you really soon.
Yes.
And guys, don't forget, most importantly of all, don't forget to call your mom.
If you haven't liked or subscribed, you're going to be joking me.